This video is going to go over image properties, dimensions, formats, and commands. In the Getting Acquainted Projects video, I went over the Images folder for each project you create. In addition to these, I also want to point out the main Images folder that is used by my server. You can find it in File Explorer in the www root folder amongst your project folders. This houses images such as weather icons, TV apps, and various others used by the system. We do not recommend overwriting these images because every time there is a software update, they will get overwritten with the original defaults. I do want to make you aware of the collection of seasonal photos that are stored here, in the Weather, and then Seasons folder. These will be available after the next Moonlight update. I point it out because they make interesting backgrounds should you choose to use one for your tablet UI. Just copy and paste into your individual project folder. Moving on, let's take a look at the image component by dropping one on the scene. In the properties, I am going to select an image from my folder by clicking the More button next to the image/server variable name in the image definition section. I am going to grab an outdoor lighting sconce. When the image appears, it is presented in its native resolution. Above, in the positioning section, we can check the Maintain Aspect Ratio when sizing before we reduce the size. If I click in either the height or width fields and roll, the numbers change in accordance with each other. I am going to also point out the rotation feature, which I haven't talked about yet because I tend to mostly use it with images. Again, for this sconce, you can either roll it into position or use arrows or type in the degree of rotation. We use this feature a lot when doing floor plans as there are various angles. Back to the image definition section. Next to the selected image field, you have an opacity option. This is something that actually does get used once in a while. Below this, you will find auto refresh and fade in out options. The auto refresh is primarily used for cameras. It will automatically refresh the image so you can view it in near real time. You have the option of setting the time for refresh rate in milliseconds, although you don't need to, as it will just use the default of 25. You can set it to something else if you want to. The fade in or out options is an effect which we use on images in digital signage to make images come and go from view. You can also set this in milliseconds. This does not have a default, so you need to set it. Below is the image border style. We went over borders and buttons, and this works the same way. You do also have the option of rounding the corners on your image. Below this is shadow effects. This option is fixed in that either you want it or you don't. You have the option of selecting the size of the shadow. You can also do an inner shadow. Under the image states, you will see that it is the same as labels and buttons, except that you can select an active and inactive image. You can also set a filter on your image in an active and inactive state. This is useful if you would like to gray something out in an off state, for example. In addition, you can rotate the image. We use this feature for ceiling fans. Now, I am going to put in the reference variable we use for the on or off status of a light. This outdoor sconce is light number 42, so the server variable is lighting_42_status in curly braces. The only other thing I need in this instance is to make sure the active state has an opacity of 100 and is visible when active, and the inactive state has an opacity of 0 and is not visible when inactive. When the image is going to be the same for both states, as I am doing, you do not have to select it here. You would only need to do it if the images were going to be different. Also, we do not need this to be clickable as it is just showing status. And the last tab is Click Commands, which you are already familiar with from the Buttons Part 2 video. Since I did not make this image clickable, I would not need any commands. But, if I wanted to be able to click this image to make the light go on and off, I would first have to go back to the states and make the image clickable in each state. I would also set the inactive opacity to something just greater than 0 so that you could see that there was something there that was off. Maybe like 20. Then in the server command field I would place my command for toggling light number 42 or whatever your number is. Lighting, pipe, 42, tilde, toggle. Now if I save and launch this, we can take a look. Finally, I want to point out that we use background images that are created for a typical tablet. They are set to the standard aspect ratio of an iPad, but they will dynamically resize themselves based on the device they are being displayed on. Our images are targeted for iPads and iPhones, but will work on any device. Although there are no size restrictions in the designer, you have to take into account the amount of time it will take to download and display on the device. For this reason, we keep background images at 1366 by 1000 for tablets. For phones, we keep them at 414 by 847. And for the smart remote, 480 by 800. If you are going to use any of the background images in the weather seasons folders that I mentioned, they will automatically be resized to fit the screen. When it comes to format, you can use any type that is able to be displayed in a web page, including JPEG, PNG, GIF, and SVG. That is it for this video. Thanks for watching.